So my name is John Doherty, and I'm the director of a school called the Beehive, which originally I set up to help people live a more contemplative life, particularly in today's world where everything is so fast and crazy, but really to help people to slow down and, get more from life. So today I'm here to talk about a particular theme, which is the idea that something is missing in my life. And I suppose it comes from my own story, having felt that for many years. And also people that I work with who come and say, I feel like something is missing, or I'm not sure what my purpose in life is, or life, doesn't have the meaning that I'd like it to have, or I feel a bit lost. So all of these questions or statements really are the reason why I'm making this video, and part of the work we do in the school. So I think what happens and I know in my own case for many years I spent the time looking to find what was missing outside of myself, hoping that I'd find it in relationship, in all sorts of different places, drink, drugs, all sorts of addictions. I think that we try and fill that sort of empty space with inside ourselves. And while these, they can in the short term give us a sense of evenness or somehow fullness, in the long term it just, it just continues to create the feeling of being empty, and makes it worse even, at times. So after many years of doing that and not succeeding, I decided to look inwards, and I encourage people to do that in the school too. And that's part of the reason why we're running the school. That what's missing, we feel is missing in ourselves, maybe we can find in ourselves rather than outside. Part of the journey of finding what's missing in ourselves is, looking at our lives. If we go back psychologically through our lives, we've got the adult time, our young adult years, the teenage years, the rebellious teenage years, or whatever your teenager was like, the childhood years, and so on. And what happens, I feel, is that because of different experiences during those times, we're not always able to cope with those experiences that life brings, difficult experiences. And part of the coping is to just lock that experience away, maybe emotionally or otherwise. But unfortunately, in doing that, we also lose a part of our identity, our sense of self. And as the years go on, we think we're fine and everything is good, and then all of a sudden we can reach a place where we don't always feel we're getting enough from life, that somehow life isn't as fulfilling as we want it to be, or again something is missing or lost somehow. And part of this particular process is to be able to reclaim those parts of my identity that have gotten lost in those experiences. And not so much going back into the past. People always say that, I don't want to go back into the past necessarily. But to invite those parts of ourselves that have been lost to come into the present with us now, so that we can really experience the fullness of the moment by being here fully. And that's the irony, I suppose. They say in the East, they would say that enlightenment is here now. And in the West too, that, the end of the spiritual journey is here, not there. People always say to me, John, I can't wait to get there. Whereas really the paradox of that is that the end of the journey is here, right now. And yet if I look at my world, at my reality here right now, it may not be great. It's like, well, but if this is the end of the spiritual journey, it's not great, is it? And that's the challenge too, to sort of, You know, as Ram Dass says, the enlightenment can be the biggest disappointment for the ego. And that's part of the spiritual process, understanding that, what that means in everyday life. So we're really inviting all of myself to be here now, and therefore get the most out of every moment that I can, and really be present to whatever presents. Even the difficult emotions or thoughts, the negative ones, they all have their place. And, you know, the more present I am, the easier it is to make friends with those and not be thrown by them. And then an underlying sense of well-being begins to arise, an underlying sense of joy even begins to arise. But it can take, I know it took me 20 years even, just to realize that what I was looking for wasn't out there, and to begin the process of finding it in myself. You know, the way, and it's the way people suffer the most today, I think, in today's world. Okay, we suffer with all sorts of things, pain and loss and illness and all sorts of anxieties and problems. But underneath all of that, the biggest suffering people have is this identity loss. Or, you know, a sense of soul loss, it's sometimes called in another language. The way that this identity loss or soul loss presents is for people, they don't know who they are. You know, there's a sense of lostness. I don't know who I am. I have ideas about who I'm supposed to be in my job, in my role as parent or partner or son. But at a deeper level, I haven't made that deep connection to who I am beyond the egoic mind, the personality. And that's where the suffering is, really, the deepest suffering. And that's why you know, that's a big part of the reason why we're offering the work we do, to help people to get in touch with that and overcome it in some way. So when people say to me, I feel like something's missing in my life or something's missing in myself, you know, there's a common word we use in spirituality, you know, called emptiness, that there's a feeling of emptiness. You know, my life is empty in some way. And of course, life is full of things that can give that feeling. When we lose something, there's an emptiness. When there's disappointments and so on. But also on an inner level, you know, after we have, say, a strong emotion of joy, or even, you know, a nice sort of thought, there's always a moment of emptiness when that emotion or thought goes. And the real, you know, the emptiness itself has a purpose, and particularly in the work that we do. Initially, when we say something's missing in my life, I want to fill that emptiness. I want to fill it with something outside of myself, because it's not a nice feeling. And we begin to learn that what I need to find with that emptiness is myself, to come and to sort of, you know, that what's creating the emptiness initially is because I'm not here fully. There are parts of me that aren't here. But as we begin to progress in our journey, we realize the importance of the emptiness. It takes on a different quality. And in a way, the emptiness becomes the doorway for spiritual transformation. You know, not necessarily the high, the epiphany, all these different things, images people have of what spirituality is, but in the ordinary, sometimes difficult to be friends with feeling of emptiness. And that can be quite a letdown as well, especially for the ego. There's a lot of letdowns for the ego in this process. So the emptiness becomes a doorway that we can find or connect to the bigger part of our identity through. We call it the transcendent part, the big self, or our divine self, or to God, if you want to use that language, to God, you know. And so we realize, gosh, the emptiness has a purpose once we begin to make friends with it. So on a personal level, we look to find ourselves and integrate ourselves. And then as that process develops, we realize, we're not trying to fill the emptiness so much, but it changes the quality of the emptiness, and it becomes this door that allows us to then transcend ourselves in and become more whole, not just in our connection to ourselves personally, but also to everybody else. And we realize we are connected to everybody else, but not so much as a thought, but as an experience. And that gives a sense of well-being in the long term, that sense of inner joy, of inner wellness and wholeness then begins to come through